Executive Forum is an initiative driven by the XPGTN batch of XLRR. The forum allows students to interact with industry stalwarts who share valuable insights on their roles and responsibilities, their knowledge about the industry, and the diverse corporate challenges they faced. The forum gives students a wholesome experience by providing the taste of the corporate world along with the incredible exposure and learning experience they get in the classrooms.
Hello everyone. It gives me an immense pleasure to have Mr. Emmanuel David, the Director, Tata Management Training Center, for this conversation today. Mr. Emmanuel David has around 40 years of hands-on experience managing multicultural workforce in the Oberoi, Asia Tractors, Hindustan Motors and Voltas. As a Director of Tata Management Training Center, he has groomed around hundreds of leaders for the Tata Group. Mr. Emmanuel is an alumnus of XLRI and he is also equipped himself with an advanced management program of AIMA on strategic profitability management. He is also a certified Wellbeing team role facilitator and an advanced organ assessment interpretation coach. And he is also an experimental cook, an avid photographer, a reader blogger, and a writer who does not limit himself to one phase. Sir, thank you again for accepting our invitation.
Nareshwar and Priyanka and Jagan, thank you so much for hosting me. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be with you all and exchange a few thoughts.
Thank you, sir. It's our privilege to have this conversation with you today. Sir, after going through your profile, I saw that you have worked in multiple industries in multiple roles. And as someone who have transitioned from the role of CHRO in various organizations to the director of TMTC, where you groom the next generation Tata Group leaders, tell us something about your experience as a mentor as you shaped the future of the entire Tata Group.
I think it was a great opportunity for me, and I took on this responsibility about 6 years ago. And having, when you look at leadership as a CHRO, you're very much looking at performance and various aspects of delivery. And more than anything else, we have to be concerned as CHROs on employee morale, then discipline, talent acquisition. So forever, you are chasing after very many things of yesterday, most places. But the times sometimes when I have worked actually as a CHRO and focused on development, life was a little more easier. So when I came to this role in the Tata Management Training Center, it gave me time to reflect and think. And it also made me think about what is important for leadership. And we have a lot of various content already there, but I looked at the aspect of how can people learn, of course, about leadership, but more importantly, get feedback and have an opportunity for discussion and dialogue. Sometimes you call it as coaching and all that, but even then, in the class, if the faculty can help the people reflect and think and make choices, I think that makes a lot of difference. And so when people have come to sessions and leadership interventions, we found that this is an important aspect. Very often, as a CHRO, one looked at a program only. But in this role, we looked at leadership journeys and engagements, which meant over a period of time, and you not only gave them educational inputs, put them on some projects, and more importantly, give them an opportunity to reflect through feedback and prepare some plans of development, even if it can be one idea, but it makes a difference. So, and above all, there are so many things happening in the world in terms of sustainability or ethics or reputation. That sensitization is also important, because very often when people look at leadership, they only look at it from the content part of it. But the contextual issues and how they will impact their own leadership style becomes very critical. So I focused a lot in the sessions I take on especially on understanding self. I help people reflect and prepare some development plans. And I think thoughtful leaders are the requirement today. And if we can just ignite that spark, it's a job reasonably well done. That's what I would think.
Thanks for the answer, sir. Sir, John F. Kennedy once quoted, "When written in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of two characters. One represents danger and the other represents opportunity." When I was going through your profile, I came across an award, British Gas Safety Award for Community Action in the year 2007 for your contribution to the recovery and rehabilitation of the Surat facility after the floods in 2006. Can you elaborate, sir, on your experience with crisis management?
See, that's become a case at IMA. And for me, trying to encapsulate everything in a few minutes, I'll try to do justice.
Yes.
But you're very right that, crisis becomes an opportunity. And I have always read about it as while in colleges, just like you, and it made an impact. And let me just go a little step further. When I was in college, not at Excel, but in my graduation, I had the opportunity to work in and be a volunteer in 2 cyclone relief camps in Andhra Pradesh. And that, I think, shaped a lot of my response to crises. So you need to be quick and you need to also be caring. Both are important. And when we came to this Surat floods, there's a little background. In July of 2006, the floods were in the first week of August. In July of 2006, there were bomb blasts in Bombay, in the metro trains. And so my MD asked me, where are our employees? I didn't have the data. So I told my HR heads in all the 3 locations, I said, can we map who is where, their address, get me all these details. I kind of gave an executive order and they did it in about 2-3 weeks time. I said, I want to know where everybody is living and their details of their family, etc. Because we don't know if the uncertainty hits, there can be a problem. So that information came and resided with us. And I was in Ahmedabad where there were no floods. But the headquarters of British Gas, Gujarat Gas, was in Ahmedabad. And the operations were in Surat and in the city called Ankleshwar, which is close by. So I think in the first week of August, the flood water started rising. We had been through certain drills of safety, etc. So one of my safety, we were sensitive to the alerts. So my admin and security manager told me that morning, he said, Emi, it's likely the waters will flood because they're releasing water at the dam. And we know it'll take about 8 to 10 hours for the water to come by. So quickly, all vehicles were taken away to higher areas. And in the space, there were some 2-3 buildings where the office premises were there, as well as the residential quarters. So this gentleman built some, he had tied ropes at about 20 feet level or so. That's again foresight. And since we had floods earlier, there was a boat also there. Anyway, so when the water started rising, everything else didn't happen. Everything packed up. So, but a few of our colleagues were in the office, about 15 or so of them. They had some supplies. Fortunately, the security manager, he filled up the diesel to about 1,000 liters so that the genset was running and there was some water stock, etc. and the Waters rose. And that was the time, as the senior team, we were so helpless. What do we do? And everyone was thinking what to do. Then I said, no, we need to prepare for the rehabilitation. And what I did, in 77, 79 kind of came to fore. I said, let's prepare. Someone said we need to have food packets. I said, sure, we can do that. But since we had the list of all the people and all the data, we were able to map where they're living. So we knew who is living in what kind of a place, and Gujarat Gas also supplies gas to the city. So you knew the total terrain, and we knew how our employees were kind of impacted, and who would be at risk, and we knew the family members. So we knew how many little infants were there, children were there, elderly people, and we created packets accordingly. That's one thing, but we knew we can't go and deliver. So lots of ideas were thought through. Fortunately, there were some contacts I had in the Air Force. So reached out to them, and then we sent out text messages to the pilots. We got to know the pilots' details and requested them to drop food packets. Now you see, in the normal situation, the address. I mean, this is Circuit House area, East Jamshedpur, that's the address. But when it is full of water, you don't know which road is where. That's when 2005-06 was Google Maps had come in. We picked up the coordinates, texted to the pilots. And I still remember one person, now he's a head of marketing in another company. So he says, Emmy, I am in a difficulty. Children are small, they are really, really thirsty. So we texted it out. And then fortunately, these people responded. 1 hour later, the same person tells me, we got this detail. We got the food supplies. But more importantly, the role the colleagues did was to ensure gas supply all those 8 days without interruption. Okay, without interruption. And because there was gas supply, people could at least boil water or cook. When water supply, milk supply, newspapers, telephones, electricity, everything else was shut down in the city. Okay. Then a lot of planning went in terms of the medical relief if required, because after a flood there will be issues. Then we said, what rehabilitation should we do? So I went physically to the place and spearheaded and led the whole relief operations. So within about 24 hours or for about 36 hours, we had our gensets running once the flood waters came. Worked with the local administration to ensure that they support us. Also, we realized we were supplying compressed natural gas, CNG. So one of my first efforts was to get the first CNG pump running. Why? Because many people, the auto rickshaw drivers, are dependent on CNG for their livelihood. And we got that moving as well, side by side. And one small thing I should tell you, there were about 325 people, employees. So we said we'll give them a food packet, some relief package. But that was the apparent idea. But the real thing was to find out if they're okay or not. We don't know how they are. What if there are casualties? So August 15th, that was Independence Day, 11 o'clock, people said, we met all our people, all are safe, and gave me a lot of relief that, yeah, all are safe. But we made contingency plans in case there is a unfortunate death or so. How should we handle it? What should be the letter? So the whole thing was again data, preparation, planning, thinking, and reasonable execution. And we had the plant up and running in about 2.5-3 days time, so that could supply the gas and whatever cleaning, everything could be done. Even before the flood waters could come, I'd called up carpenters, electricians, masons, and all these people. I said, you have to come to Surat. They said, how can we come? I said, no, as soon as the waters recede, you have to come so that you can help us in the rehabilitation. And then these skills became scarce once the waters went down. But we had at least a 4-5 days head start in thinking. And those were some of the things which happened. And the citizens of Surat said, if the gas supply was not there, our casualties would have been much higher, 10x or 100x. And they were grateful to us. There were public functions in which they had acknowledged our efforts. And that's why the chairman of British Gas in UK gave us that award and saying that, well, this is something that had a social impact and we went through. Now, I discovered myself as such in terms of leadership and taking tough calls. For instance, someone said, what should we do on some matter? I said, he was coming from Bombay. I said, can you pick up a RO plant, so that when water comes out, we can purify it. He said, it costs about 5 lakhs. I said, no, just pick it up and I will tell the person to send the payment, but bring it in, So in about 2-3 hours that was there and we could actually have clean water. So it's just that simple clarity and taking quick action. All these things kind of helped. I think it was a great teamwork. A lot of thinking and planning went in when the floodwaters are. So when the waters came down, we went into execution. So, we can talk a lot about it, but it was a discovery process, and I felt good that we could do something which will be helpful and make an impact.
It is really a commendable effort, sir. It deserves to be a part of a case study. I think Jagan will be able to relate it better because he was a victim of Chennai flood too.
Yes, I had lots of glimpses of Chennai flood when you were narrating your story. And sir, it was fortunate for us that me and Sarvesh were a part of a team who did a crisis management of Chennai flood for some of the assignment. We took 4-hour process, which is ready, response, reduce, and repair. We had 4 studies and we did. So we are actually able to relate it very easily.
Exactly.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the commendable effort.
Thank you. No, it's a great team effort, and sometimes you need to also give the nudge. In fact, I remember I told the MD, listen, I'm handling it, you stay away. Sometimes you have to take those calls. My room became a control room, and so we had a lot of, and everyone were working on different aspects. So it's like an orchestra, different people who are specialists in those areas, they were working, and then we all did well.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Emmanuel. The next question will be from my side. We hear a lot about personality, how to judge people's personality, like analyzing people's personalities using tools like Hogan, MBTI. So what is your view on those? How to identify if people are better fit for a particular job role using those personality tests?
So I'll give you a simple analogy. See, all of us are looking at ourselves in the screen. Suppose, my specs were otherwise, and I look in the mirror, I'm going to change it, right? I'm going to put it properly. If my hair is not okay, we're going to make some little adjustments, etc. And I think the personality tools like Hogan or Belbin and also the MBTI help us actually look ourselves as a mirror. Many a time we don't get the opportunity. And then it actually helps us understand the why do people behave that way. My own learning for myself, sometimes I thought people don't like me or against me. But when I look at the personality assessment tools, I know they're themselves, they're behaving naturally, and it's about them, it's not about me. That somewhere, if you are able to get that understanding clear, it is helpful. So trained people should also administer it because of the fear of misunderstanding, not of any bad understanding or bad intention. There's a fear of the risk of misunderstanding or misinterpretation. So that is one part. Now coming down to different job roles in any work environment, corporate or NGO, So that requires certain skills and certain personality types. So suppose I'm a shy, reserved person, I cannot necessarily be in a place where I need to entertain people and socialize. Okay. So the personality tool actually tells you what is your preference, how do you like to behave. Particularly the Hogan tells you how do you behave under stress and what drives you. So when you understand that and you say, hey, something like a sales role is you would like some of these qualities, and therefore there's a match, you know. So that is the way I'd like to see it, and therefore you must have clarity on the role first, even before thinking about the person. You have clarity on the role, and say for that role, these are the kind of capability, these are the kind of personality types you're most likely to fit. Then you fit the persons who you kind of work with. In one instance, I had to help a non-government organization, and so I said, let's use the Belbin team role process. And then we said, for this, first we define the role, and in the role, what are the team roles which are important. Then the candidates, about several of them, we had done their profiling and see which were the closest matches. Because what happens is, there are two things. One is you want to succeed in your role and you do not want to set up people for failure. I think the personality tool gives an objective assessment and is able to help people. But it is to that extent. You can't, of course, underscore the interview. What we'll do is to assess a little more on the motivation and general, the culture aspects. I mean, how does one behave, etc. And more importantly, what we don't have tools for is understanding ethics and values. You can have a terrific job fit through personality, but if there is a mismatch on ethics and values, perhaps you may like not to do that. So it's not that just because it is there, I'm going to use it, and so you can still have a personality tool and have a disaster, right? But if you're able to balance it out with the tool and your interview and your cultural context, I think it helps in a good selection process. Then for people who are in the organizations, at a time it's good to help them, look at themselves, like looking at the mirror. And when you have development journeys, development conversations, or any growth aspects or whatever, then you can say, where are they likely to succeed and contribute? That would also be useful. That would also be effective through the use of such tools. Curious to understand what your outcomes are.
Definitely, sir. Definitely, you share it, sir.
Sure, sir. When the outcome comes, I'll definitely share it with you. So, and this brings me to the next thing, to the bigger level. So, since you have started your career in the early 90s or late 80s, and you're still working, and you have seen through all the transitions that has happened over the years, and now people are predicting that the gig economy is going to be the next future of the workforce. And how do you think the organization should actually strategically adopt a well-conceived buy, rent, or build approach to talent attraction and retention?
Yeah, so I think somewhere rent is one aspect of it, and it is now there with several of the companies doing the outsourcing as such, and we have seen it, and I think Priyanka also experienced it a bit at Accenture as well, the rent part of it. I mean, going working with somebody else and so on and so forth. But I think it's a good situation in the gig economy. So what is happening, particularly in the last 18 months, people have become accountable for outcomes. If you really think about it, earlier you were required to put in time, and you had some roles. But now, if you don't deliver an outcome, nobody else can do the next thing. So you're becoming accountable for outcomes. And also, I've noticed as well that sometimes people have some skills which you're not able to buy because they're expensive, but you still need it to deliver the outcome. I mean, you have a customer or you have an employee, so you have to service them. So how do you get it is an issue. So I think I'm okay with all these approaches: buy, rent, or build. When you build, you buy and then again you build, in a sense. So buy, ensure that there is a reasonable, alignment with values, and there's a culture fit and understanding of context. Next, with the build also, you would have taken people right from the graduate engineer level or graduate management trainee level. So you kind of build, and that's there. But there, I suppose the processes of hiring is important. So in all these three options, some congruence with the culture is key. And because you can't see culture, but you can understand strategy and you can understand a product, we don't put that emphasis. And the hiring managers also will say, let me get on with the job. No? Why should I break my head on this? So today, particularly the rent approach, you have a reputational risk. Or somebody has been asked to do something and he doesn't do it, or does it wrongly. Doesn't do it still is okay, minimal risk. There's a thing, I'm very sorry, you will say. He does a wrong thing and does something abusive, then there's a reputational risk. And you're seeing it, right? So, and because it is intellectual work, it's physical work, there's contract workers, the rent part of it. And you've seen it also, Sarveshwar, in your R&D stint in the tractor company. So you get people to kind of make the prototype or whatever it is, but and then it's done because it's a tangible thing. But with intangibles, we need to be mindful of this reputational risk, or customer not being met. Also in terms of data protection and privacy. So those are some things which are sometimes gray zones. As long as we can see 2 steps, 4 steps ahead and de-risk ourselves, any approach is okay. But I would say cultural harmony is the foundation. Then rest is a matter of contracting. Because even if you pay less or more, because rent is what? You do it only if the business model is such that you can't afford somebody on your payroll all the time, and work is intermittent, then you'll rent it. Right? But at that point, just ensure there is congruence with all other factors of the culture. And I think it gives a lot of flexibility to people in terms of accounting as well, that I'm not having any fixed costs. It's a variable cost. Therefore, the cost per unit or cost per service can come down a little bit. And also, if you can get many people to do something on your platform, then you expand your market.
Got it.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. I was saying that life is not a bed of roses. So there will be issues, conflicts everywhere. Now, even in industry, we see a lot of conflicts happening. As someone who has championed, such disputes, so can you share some insights on how you dealt with those situations? Just a few, maybe snippets from yours to life.
Which disputes? Industrial disputes?
Industrial, yes, yes.
No, actually, I'll see. I think somewhere I was fortunate early in life to understand that the union is an institution. That's an important aspect. Though the union leaders may be lower in the hierarchy, it's an institution, just like the company is an institution. And if you see, there is a bit of a contrast between a union leader and a manager. The union leader is elected, the manager is appointed. then union leader is accountable to his constituency. The manager is accountable to his bosses. Okay, and then we look at the motivation of people. For the union person, it's intrinsic. I don't know much for the manager. Is it his title, his money, whatever it is, we don't know. Whereas for this guy, it's a mission. Then, so these are two asymmetries which happen. If people kind of understand that this is the anatomy of this whole structure, then we will know why a dispute is there. If we do not, then we are going to do what we think is right, what should be there. So that is an important aspect. I have always maintained in industrial relations, there must be fairness. That's been one aspect. Now, fairness means not being nice, but doing what is required. So if you are able to get that equation simple and clear, it is okay. And you asked in this situation of unrecoverable position. Yeah, I've been in situations, at least 3-4 disputes which are unrecoverable kind of a once in UP there was one situation, and for 10 years there have been fights, and every time the union wanted something, they went on a strike, the management agreed, and it went off. So I looked at the history, I said, listen, next time you guys try a strike, I'm going to do this, no work, no wages. They said, no, what is it? I said, no, that will happen. The next time it happened, I implemented it. But because again, discussing with everyone, implemented it. And that sent a message that we better dialogue rather than strike. And what was required for them, we did. But that changed the context. In one situation, there was some funny matter. It was a very funny thing, like a scholarship scheme was there. And so all employees' children who it was kind of an award, not even a scholarship. It was a gift, for good performance. So anyone who got 70% and 80% would give some 400 rupees and 500 rupees to the children. So after about 2-3 years, my predecessor decided that he must raise the bar, just like you do in bell curve. He said, I'm changing it from 70%, 80% to 80% and 90%. People should do better. He's not wrong. But he announced it 2 days before the award ceremony. So dramatically, the numbers fell. And the union was upset, and they didn't strike. They raised a dispute. It went to the court. Then my predecessor left, and I had taken over, looking at the court cases, and I knew they were going to lose that case. It's a sure shot. You're going to lose the case because you have to give at least about 21 days notice, and all these legal formalities were there. So I had a dialogue with the workers. I said, hey, what if we, and 2 years had passed, and so much of heartburn and anger was there with everybody. And I said, what if we maintain, 70%, 80%, and also what my predecessor said, 90%, we'll introduce a new thing, 90%, and we'll give 600 rupees. They said, okay. And they withdrew the case. And for me, that was a big win, because had we lost the case, we'd have lost a lot more than anything else. And then since this discussion happened and people liked it, they came back into the room, and then I distributed, my MD and I distributed. And this is a suburban town, it's not a metro town. That's when it struck me, the issue is not so much the awards, it's the way it was changed. And more importantly for the children, this was the only opportunity of social recognition. That a child goes up, Miss Priyanka Paul goes up, parents clap, whole family claps. And they get, even for that 3 seconds, makes a difference. The photograph taken. And that was denied, suddenly. So sometimes, we make calls without adequate homework. And I am a firm believer, especially with employee relations, you must understand the implications, do your homework. And if you tell things clearly, people understand and agree. And I've taken tough calls. I've told unions sometimes that I'm going to actually sack so-and-so. We're taking disciplinary action, we're going to do that. And then in my most recent assignment, they laughed at me. They said, no, none of the HR directors did it. I said, it's okay, but I have everyday discussions with you. I do not want to do behind your back. You shouldn't say that, you had discussions and today you sent out a letter. I'm telling you this. I knew it was a risk. If they go for a caveat or an injunction, it would have been a problem. It's a risk I took. But when it happened, suddenly my credibility went up. That whatever he says, he does. So next time there was something positive also, then it helped. So I think you must see where do they all fit in, what are they doing, and recognize it's an institution. It is not possible for individual to influence all the work. There's a union, work with it. Don't kind of fight it. Don't try to say, oh, what is it and all that. But Priyanka, the interesting thing is I've had 2 greenfield projects. In both the greenfield projects, when we looked at policy, I said it must be simple and logical and inclusive, and some of these things were there. And in both those places, during my tenure, there was no union, and at least for a few more years after that, there was no union. People did not find the need to, actually come together for common causes, for their own rights. Because if you're able to respond to all of them and think through already that this is what people need and work on it, it helps. So I think we must look at people, workers also, as human beings and people, and treat them with love and empathy. Be demanding, be accountable, that's okay. That's fine. They also want to work. But treat them with affection. That is what I would say. And then, disputes are a little less. But when you have to take some tough calls, take the calls. That's no issue. I've taken tough calls. Sometimes unpopular calls. But it does not mean you don't have any issue. As long as you explain the logic. Never be arbitrary. Because it's a power play. One time one MD said, why did you give a few warning letters and suspend a few people? Okay. Then what happens? Where will they go? They will go to the union and they will say this management is arbitrary. When the union gets powerful, okay, when they get powerful, then you have to fight them. But if you don't do that, but you do other things, wherever they make a mistake, you catch them and then you be firm as per policy, then they can't say anything. They can't come and fight for a wrong cause. So if you look at power, do you want to strengthen the union by taking arbitrary action and then withdrawing things? No. Like I told you on the case which I ensured that we settled before it went against us. If it gone against us, the power, we've lost it. So it's a lot of power thinking as well. And if your profs in Excel can also guide you or take a little 1 credit course on power at organizations, it might be an interesting thing. So there are choices you have to make which on the positive use of power.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, we should not just think, like from our head, like head and heart should be combined, and then we should take a decision.
Power combined with empathy. It's the mantra.
Sometimes it is better to remember stress and effect as well, sir.
What's it, Jagan?
Sometimes it is better to remember the stress and effect. Sometimes it is better to ignore and then specifically catch them at some point.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing this incident, sir. I think we have taken a few more valuable time of yours today. It was really an insightful session that we forgot the time.
Yeah.
Now I'd like to ask if you have anything to share, you can share for the last time before Jagat starts with this thank you note.
No, I'm glad that you're doing formats like this so that I think you would let others also see it. So it is not just an open-ended. I'm sure you'll edit it as well and make it sharper. I think that's an interesting format of communicating and getting across to people. I want to wish you well on that, and you can get learning from different walks of life. Finally, there's just one word I can tell you is one sentence. Expertise can be bought, but relationships have to be built. Expertise can be bought, but relationship has to be built. So whatever it is, invest in relationships as well while you improve your expertise.
I like that.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. That's a great line.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Sir, thanks for the interactive and inspiring session within the limited time constraint. Your insights on crisis management, personality identifying tools, gig economy to strategy HRM made the session more enlightening. That will help us in our long run as management executives. The session was more like a mentor-mentee session, as you took time to explain by taking illustrations from your experiences. I'm sure that we will come back to you to share the outcomes once we are done with our thesis. Once again, thanks for spending your valuable time with us, sir.
Well, most welcome. Stay
Yes.
connected.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Looking
Thank you, sir.
forward,
Thank you.
to further engagement. Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.